Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. It's Bells and we are back at it again with some tarot TBR. My tarot cards chose my TBR for January and I literally once again could not be happier. I feel like these cards are forcing me to read books that I've been putting off for a long time and I just love it. But before we get started, if you are new here and you're looking for more fun book related content, don't forget to maybe hit that subscribe button and the little notification bell so you don't miss anything. Hit the little like button if you enjoy this video, and now we can bring on the books. Okay, so before we get started, I just want to share I'm using the Yoshitani Tarot of the Divine tarot card deck. And if you want to see the rules of this game, I have a Google Doc linked down below with all of the prompts for every one of the cards. Or you can also check out my last video, which goes a little bit more in depth into the rules of the game. Let's get started! Oh my gosh! The first card that I picked up, I was very surprised, and it was the Lovers again. This card is represented by Beauty and the Beast. It's so pretty. Because I literally just did this last month, you can again go watch that video if you want to see a more well-rounded explanation of this card, but I'll give you a quick briefing. The brief version of the OG Beauty and the Beast story is an ugly fairy curses the Beast for not being seduced by her, not being attracted to her, something along those lines. Beauty's father goes on an adventure, winds up at the Beast's castle, steals something from his castle, and is told that if he wants to stay alive, he'll have to bring one of his daughters back in exchange. So Beauty offers to go because she's lovely and great, and she lives a very opulent lifestyle. She's super happy, and she slowly falls in love with the Beast during this time. She asks him to go home after a few months to visit her family, and he says, "Yes, but I will die from grief if you stay away too long." Yikes. When she goes back to her family, her ugly and terrible sisters, think like Cinderella stepsisters, trap her at her house, and by the time she gets back to the castle, the Beast is dying of grief. She realizes she loves him, they kiss. They live happily ever after. The Lover's card specifically suggests love and harmony, trust, also like making a choice, creating that conscious connection with someone, honesty, open communication, all the things that are really beneficial in a healthy relationship. My prompt for the Lover's card is a romance between two unlikely people. I settled on Rhapsodic by Laura Talassa. This is about a siren. I don't know if you know this about me, but I love mermaids. I am obsessed with mermaids and sirens. I think they are the coolest thing ever. I want to be a mermaid. I feel like I was a mermaid in a past life. It's about a siren who's been basically getting a lot of favors. Only like death or specific repayment will fulfill the obligations. And the bargainer is the man who can make favors happen. He's never asked for repayment from Calypso, our siren, until he shows up asking for a little kiss for one of her favors. They like used to be an item and now they're not, but now Fae warriors are going missing. Only the women are returned. The bargainer is trying to save his people. He needs the help of Calypso. I don't know, it just sounded like so much fun, and there's fairies and mermaids. I just wanted an excuse to read it, I guess. But I feel like the romance between, you know, old flames is something that feels unlikely to a lot of people. I know for me, it certainly does. The next card that I picked up was the King of Cups, which also a gorgeous card. The story that's represented here is The Boy and the Dragon Pearl. So this is a really well-known Chinese legend, and one version of it is that in Sichuan, China, a woman and his son lived a really poor life. So every day the boy would like go and hike to the country, cut a bunch of grass, and then sell the grass, and then use the money to buy food for them, and that was like how they stayed alive. After a drought, he had to like keep going further and further until he found the most lush patch of green grass he had ever seen. He cut the whole patch, got a whole bunch of money for it, and him and his mom went to bed full. The next day, he was hoping that it would still be there, and he found that the grass had grown back, so he did the same thing. My cat is just making all the noise right now. So after 6 days of him going to the grass and it being grown back, the boy decided that he would dig up the grass and plant it outside of his house so that he wouldn't have to walk so far. As he was like digging the grass up, he finds this like really beautiful pearl. And so he brings it home with him. And his mother says instead of selling it that they should keep it because it's good luck to have something so beautiful come into their lives by chance. And she puts it into a bowl of rice, to keep it safe overnight. The next day, the boy goes outside to check the grass that he's planted and finds that it's withered away. But he goes inside to check on the pearl and finds that the bowl of rice that the pearl was sitting in is now overflowing. And so every night, wherever they put the pearl, when they wake up, there was an overabundance of whatever that thing was. They were really generous and good with their new fortune. Eventually, some greedy men, and some say they were sent by the emperor, show up at their house demanding to know the secret. The boy puts the pearl in his mouth to hide it and winds up swallowing it. He finds himself thirstier than he had ever been and drinks literally the entire well, and then begins to grow and change and becomes a dragon, the guardian of the river that's nearby. The King of Cups, the card, is about devotion, loyalty, faithfulness, wisdom, generosity, mastery over your own emotions. Really, when the King of Cups pops up, it's kind of like encouraging your own emotional maturity. In this case, my prompt for King cards is a male author, and so I was looking for something that was about greed or a change in fortune or something like that felt really magical. Turns out I don't have very many male authors on my TBR, which was kind of an interesting revelation. But the book that I settled on was Coraline by Neil Gaiman, which, if you don't know, Coraline, who is feeling unwanted and unwelcome at home, explores her new house to find a door with a brick wall behind it. When she opens it, she discovers a parallel universe where everything is better, even the parents, but the other mother is trying to trap her as she has trapped other children there, and Coraline is like their only hope. I am obsessed with this movie. I watch it at least twice a year. I love Coraline. I love the story of Coraline. And I've never read the book, which is crazy to me. It's very magical. Theoretically, it's a change in fortune. Things are getting better for her. And I'm really, really excited to read it and see how much the movie takes from the book and where they kind of differ. I always find that such an interesting thing with the two different kinds of mediums. The next card that I picked up was the Four of Swords, and this one is a lot. So this is the story of Fenrir, who is Norse mythology, I believe. He's the son of the god Loki and of the giantess Angerboda. The gods raise Fenrir themselves to kind of like keep him under control, but he grows at such a fast pace that the gods decide to chain him up, but trick him into thinking that it was a game. Fenrir breaks through the chains the first 2 times they try to do it, and so the gods have the dwarves forge the strongest chain that looks really soft and light, and so Fenrir was really suspicious when he sees this new chain and refused to play the game unless one of the gods put their hand in his mouth as a pledge of good faith. The god Tyr was the only god brave enough to do so because he just knows that he's gonna lose his arm for it. And when Fenrir was unable to break through the chain, he rips Tyr's hand from its arm. And then the chain was tied to a boulder and a sword was placed in Fenrir's jaws to like hold them open. And as he howled endlessly, a foamy river called Expectation yikes, flowed from his drooling mouth. But it's not the end of Expectation. We expect him to come back, and at Ragnarok, which is basically the Norse end of the world, Fenrir will break free and run around the world with his lower jaw against the ground and his upper jaw against the sky, devouring everything. So that's the really cheerful story of Fenrir, who is on this card. I feel for Fenrir, honestly. The Four of Swords, specifically when it comes up in a spread, often suggests you rest before taking on the next challenge. If you're feeling stressed, like take a step back to gain some perspective. My prompt for the number 4 cards is a classic. So I was looking for a classic that was maybe about animals or with an anti-hero or about a sanctuary or about lies. And I settled on The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood, which again, I love the show and I think it's a travesty that I haven't read this book yet. If you don't know or if you haven't seen the show, it's in a dystopian future with of Fred as our protagonist. She is a handmaid in the Republic of Gilead whose only purpose is to like make a child with her commander as the world's birth rates are steadily declining. And it kind of turns into like a rebellion story. But I picked it for this one because I felt like she is trapped, very similar to how Fenrir is like trapped, chained against a boulder for all of time. Gilead likes to say that it's a sanctuary and it's all lies. The whole thing is lies. It's all bad. So I felt like that was I was gonna say a fun pick. It's not really a fun pick, but it is going to be a really interesting book to read, and I felt like it suited this card. We're gonna have a pretty dark reading month, as you'll see. The next card that I picked up was the Three of Swords. The fairy tale that is depicted here is the Crane Wife. The most typical version of this Japanese folk tale is that a poor man finds an injured crane on his doorstep and takes it in and nurses it back to health. And when he releases the crane, the next morning a woman shows up on his doorstep and they fall in love and get married. Because they need money at a certain point, the woman offers to weave really beautiful clothes that he can sell at the market, but only if he agrees never to watch her making them. And so they sell them, live a really comfortable life, but the man gets greedy, insists she makes more and more clothes, and her health really declines. One day he looks behind the door to see how she makes the clothes and discovers that at the loom is a crane literally plucking feathers from its back to weave them into the loom to make these clothes. And so when the crane sees him, she flies away, obviously, and never returns. The Three of Swords, when it comes up, isn't great. It's about like heartbreak or sadness, even self-harm. And it's about encouraging you to have like an emotional release. So expressing your sadness or anger or pain and letting you know that these feelings are a necessary part of life. This horrible time will pass and things will get better. So for the number 3, my prompt is nonfiction. And so I looked through all my nonfictions and settled on this really cheerful book called A Bright Red Scream by Marilee Strong. It is about the psychology behind self-mutilation and how it helps to cope with emotional pain. I'm really excited to read it. Again, this is a book I've been waiting to read until I'm in like a good mental headspace. Like I said, this is a really interesting, weird month that the cards picked for me, but all things that like I'm excited to read and talk about and absorb. I don't know. I felt like that was a good pick for this one, since it is about how people express their emotions, maybe in a way that isn't the healthiest, but why people do it in the first place. And I love anything about psychology. I'm super fascinated with, so I am very excited to read this one. The next card that I picked up was the King of Swords. Got a lot of swords in this one. Which is very interesting. And it's a king card, so obviously we'll be picking up a 6th book this time around. But the King of Swords is represented by the Griffin. So the Griffin is a mythical creature who is like usually a half eagle and half lion and is known for guarding treasure. They were also known to mate for life. So even if the partner of a griffin dies, it will never search for like a new partner. But the griffin is like the king of all creatures, and my brain immediately went to like Godzilla. But griffins are like all over the world in a bunch of different art and mythologies, which I think is really cool. So the King of Swords in particular, when it pops up, you are in your power and your truth. You have good clarity of mind, a good objective point of view. You are like in a really good emotional headspace with this card. And so again, with the king cards, our prompt is a male author. For this one, I was looking for something about, again, about greed, which is so interesting because the griffin guards treasure, or like mating for life or loyalty. And so I settled on The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. And I've read this book before. This will be a reread, but I haven't read it in ages. It's about a little shepherd boy, Santiago, who travels from Spain into the Egyptian desert in search of the treasure buried in the pyramids. It is about treasure, which I thought, so I felt like it suited this one. It's kind of a book that comes up a lot in like top books of all time, books you should read before you die. Like The Alchemist is always coming up, I feel like, in those sorts of lists. So I'm excited to read it as an adult. I read it as a kid and I remember liking it, but I'm excited to read it again now after a lot of change has happened in my life, and like kind of see where it goes. Our 6th card, and the one that I picked up because of the King of Swords, was the Chariot, which I think is just so pretty. I love anything with water. Give me something with water. And the story that's represented here is the 3 Princesses of Whiteland. This is a really fun little fairy tale, and I can't really share the whole thing because it's pretty long. It's a Norwegian fairy tale. A fisherman caught nothing to eat one day, and near the evening, a head appears from the water, offering fish for what his wife carried under her girdle. And so he makes the deal, and when he comes home, his wife tells him that she's pregnant, which is what he offered. He offered the baby for some fish, which was like objectively a bad deal. So the king hears of their problem and offers to protect the boy and raise the boy himself. But one day the boy begged to go fishing with his real father, and the king accepted. The second that boy is in the water, he was dragged off to a far land. I imagine him just like tumbling onto this beach in the middle of nowhere. It's like this magical land. And the boy meets an old man who told him that he would pass 3 princesses buried up to their necks in sand. And if the boy passed by the first two and spoke to the third, it would bring him good luck. He goes and does that and talks to the third princess, who is the youngest princess. And she says that 3 trolls had imprisoned them in the sand. And if he went to the castle and let each troll beat him up every night, they would be free. And so he does that, frees the princesses, marries the youngest. And after a few years, he goes to visit his family, which is like a whole hassle because obviously he's in this magical realm. And so the princess gave him like a little ring with 2 wishes, one that will take him home and one that will take him back to Whiteland, and tells him only to do what his father says and not what his mother says. So she goes home, and his mother like desperately wants to show the boy to the king who did raise him, and she gets her way. And then when the boy meets the king, he winds up wishing for his wife to be there so that the king can meet her, which summons his wife and uses up his second wish like a dum-dum. And when his wife appeared, she uses the ring and wishes herself, just herself, back. So now he's stuck. And so he decides to try to find Whiteland himself. There's like a whole other long quest that happens. He gets some fun new magical items, and then in the end he like does make it home to his wife. And that's like where the story that I read ended, although I feel like there has to be more if she literally was like,
"You idiot, I'm not staying here with you. I'm gonna go home by myself. Peace."
She can't be that excited that he returned home, but that's not the fairy tale. The fairy tales are fairy tales. So now in the Chariot, it is a major arcana card. So when it comes up in a spread, it's often about like taking an action on your decisions. It comes right after the Lovers, which I think is really interesting. And so the Lovers is about making a choice. The Chariot is about taking that choice and doing something with it, like taking action. The prompt that I have for the Chariot is a revenge story, and I wanted something about someone like taking real action against someone who's wronged you. So I picked our final cheerful book pick, and I picked The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo by Stieg Larsson. I know that this is a revenge story. I know that this is a very triggerable book. I honestly don't know much beyond that. I remember wanting to read it when I was younger, and my dad was like, absolutely the fuck not, which was objectively a good call. I've never seen the movies, I've never read the books, and it's been something that I've been really wanting to read. I think I'll really like them. Obviously, I picked it for this one because of the revenge story, and because it's something that I've been looking to read for a long time. I think this is a really interesting assortment of books. They all have themes of greed and consent and emotions, is kind of what I feel like is happening here. And they're all books that are kind of at the top of my list and have been at the top of my list for some time. So I'm really curious to see kind of what I have to learn from this. That is the end of my recommendation video. If you guys do this tarot TBR game for yourself, please let me know, because I would love to hear how it turned out for all of you guys. I have so much fun putting all of this together and doing the fairy tale research and stuff. I'm just loving it. I think these cards are picking really interesting books for me that I wouldn't necessarily pick up all at the same time. Like January is going to be a pretty heavy month. If you did enjoy this content, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and hit the notification bell, because I am going to be gone for a week, but after that I'm going to have some really fun end of 2021 content coming up that I'm super excited for. So make sure you hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of those videos. Of course, hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. As a small creator, the likes and subscribes really do mean a lot to me. Thank you so much for your love and support and hanging out until the end of the video. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, and I will see you all in 2022.